Alright, everybody, welcome back to part 4 in our Flask series. Basically, last video what we did was we made the entire backend for this login system project. In this video, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using HTML and Bootstrap to make the front end. So let's get right into the code. Alright, so basically, right now, all we have is our app.py file, and we have a couple of routes: index, login, home, and logout. And so basically what we want to do is we want to make 3 HTML pages for our routes: index, login, and home. So let me just show you those routes. Let me show you those pages. So this is going to be index, which is the user registration page. Then you have a form, and then a register now. Then you can click here, and you can be taken to the login section. And then finally, this is a pre-made account that I made. And basically, this takes you to the home page. Once you've successfully logged in, it's going to say welcome A. Basically, that's your first name. It's going to say welcome first name, and it's going to display your first name, last name, and email. Then you have logout. So that's the front end we're going to do, and we're going to be using Bootstrap and HTML in order to do that. So let's go back to the code, and let's talk about Bootstrap. So what is Bootstrap? Basically, Bootstrap is a library that allows you, Bootstrap is a library containing pre-made CSS that allows you to develop websites a lot faster. And so that'll make more sense once we get into the code. So the way Flask works is we wrote if request is equal to get return render template index.html. And so what Flask is going to, how Flask interprets this line of code is through a templates file, a templates folder. So basically we need to create a templates folder, and then basically when we run our Flask code and it sees that return render template index.html, it's going to search for the templates folder and then search for index.html inside this templates folder. And so our 3 HTML files, let's make them right now: index.html, home.html, and then login.html. They will all be inside the templates folder. So let's get started. First thing we can do is, we're working on an index.html folder. First thing we can do is do exclamation point tab. That gives us basic HTML boiler code. And so we can get our title set up, the login system, and then now we're going to be using Bootstrap to quickly style our website. So the first thing we need to do is we need to import Bootstrap, and that uses very specific syntax. Basically, it's going to take a curly braces, 2 curly braces, and then 2% signs, and we're inside both of those. We're going to write extends Bootstrap. So extends $bootstrap / base.html. So basically, this is just importing the Bootstrap library, saying that we are going to use Bootstrap in our HTML file. The next part we need to do is, we're going to copy this, and we're just going to change the command. We're going to change it to block title, and we're going to get rid of the extends. And so basically, this is just naming the title of our page. So we're going to write user registration, and then every time we make something like this block title or even this extends Bootstrap base, we need to write a end block. So just as in a if statement, end block. So if we go over here, just as in an if statement, we have 1 parentheses. We always need to do a if or else. Basically, what's happening is the Bootstrap just needs to learn how much information it needs to take, and when we use this end block, that's sending the instruction of what values are considered. So yeah. Next, we're going to move on to making the actual content of our HTML. And so basically what we're going to be doing is we're going to make a div, and it's going to have a class. And so class is something specific to HTML, and basically the way Bootstrap works is you need to specify a Bootstrap specific class, and then Bootstrap is going to take that and apply certain styles that makes your website development faster. So in our case, we want to apply two styles, Jumbotron and then Jumbotron Fluid. So these are going to be these are going to be the encompassing classes. And then obviously we're going to be developing this further and further. So we want to add another div now. It's now class equal to container, and then container dash fluid. And so basically what this is doing right now is if we go back to our index page, Jumbotron is this gray area, and then container is giving us this left margin. So that's basically what it's doing. And so let's keep going and try and make our user add the text. So user registration and then already have an account, click here. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to make an H1 that has a class of display for, and then we're going to say user registration. So this display for class is basically making the text really large. And then the caption is going to be an H4. No, it's going to be a P. That's going to be class equals lead. And then already have an account. And a tag, click here. So basically what this is doing is, obviously this is discussed in the Code Bakery HTML tutorials, but it's a paragraph that says already have an account within. This is going to be a link. We need this to link to /login. Alright, so what we're going to be doing next is basically, well, another important syntax about using Bootstrap and HTML with Flask is that all of our content is going to need to go under a block called block content. And so basically, because we're issuing this command, we're also going to need an end block. So we're just going to place that right here. And so what we can do right now is this content should be recognized by Bootstrap. And so we can take this, make sure that it's connected inside the templates folder, and we can just check this out to see that it's working correctly. So let's run our code. It seems like our code is also running. So let's stop any code that's running. That might be another file I had. And then run our code. And so we can see it's running on this link. Let's go to Google. Alright, so as you can see, we have user registration, already have an account, click here, and this is linked to login. So that's all we've done so far, and so let's continue. Alright. So inside the content command, we want to make a span that's basically going to be, this span is basically just going to be area for our flash, which is basically just going to say like this content is invalid, but we don't really need to think that much right now. And so the span is going to encompass a form that we have, and this form is going to be method equals post. So basically the form is going to be taking data and putting it inside our database. The action is going to be none, and the class is going to be, so this is the Bootstrap classes text/center. So this is just going to be centering our text. We're going to put in a border and then having a border border light space p5. And so these are all Bootstrap specific commands. I'm going to be linking the Bootstrap documentation in the description so you can learn more about Bootstrap. Obviously, this is all very specific just for this project. So yeah, all right. The next thing we want is put it right here. But basically, if you scroll back inside the video, we have a couple of inputs that are going to be input class equals form dash control. That is another Bootstrap specific type is equal to text. name is equal to first name, which is going to be important when that's something that we put in our Flask. So if we look at in slash, and then if we look in our login, the way we get our data is by looking at first name. And so we need to make sure it's the same. So then placeholder is going to be first name. So this is just going to be one input, and basically we want their first name, their last name, their email, their password, and that's it. So let's make sure to change all of this information so that it matches. Last name, this is going to be email. And then this one is going to be password. So those are 4 text fields that the user is going to be putting in, and then the final one is going to be a button that's going to be type equals submit. And so basically this is just going to make the HTML take the code, take the information that the user has submitted, and then send that to our Python. So these are all more Bootstrap specific classes, and they just allow us to speed up the web development process. So yeah, it should all be good. And let's try and see. All right, that's great. So as you can see, we have first name, last name, email, password, and then register. So what we want to do now is, if our Flask is done, account created successfully. All right, so we can try and type in some data, and we can say name, last name, email is going to be name@gmail.com, and then the password is going to be name. Obviously, you can set this to type password, and it would be the circles instead of this, but this is just for demonstration purposes. So yeah, we can click register, and it's going to send us to the login page, which we haven't done yet. And so go back to our HTML file. We can see that it worked successfully because it redirected us to the login page, meaning that our account was created successfully. And so what we need to do now is let's move on to building out the login page. And so the login page is going to be fairly similar to the index page. So let's just copy that and paste it to use it as a starter code in a sense. So there are a couple of changes. First, this needs to be user login because this is the login HTML page. And then next, we need to change this part to user login, and we change this to no account. And then this would be changed to / click here. So that's leading back to our index.html page. Right. The next part is going to be essentially the same, but with a couple of changes. We only want their email and password. And so what we can do is we can delete these first 2 inputs, and we just have to check. And so basically what we do now is it would be different. We just want to specify that this is going to be the login email and then login password so that our Python understands and the names don't get mixed up inside our MongoDB database. So everything else is going to be the same aside from the actual text we display on the button, and we just change that to login. And so something else that is needed. Okay. All right. And so this is all good. And this is basically going to be the starter code. All right. So if we reload this page, we can see user login, no account, click here, and then email, password, login. And so something else that you might have noticed inside our Python was that we run this command, flash account created successfully. And so this is an attempt to tell a user that their attempt to register worked and they can now sign in. However, if we go to our HTML, login.html, we can see that we've included nowhere to implement this flashed system. And so what we actually have to do is we have to write that in ourselves. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do div class equal container text center, and then inside this div, so these two classes are Bootstrap specific, and then what we're going to do is we're going to do curly brace parentheses, curly brace percent sign for message in get underscore flash underscore messages. And so this is basically one line of Python. What we're going to do is we're going to make a P a paragraph that's going to have a message. So this is very basic Python, and you can see we're using the curly braces and the percent signs to essentially use Python inside of HTML. So this is all we need, and then obviously we would need to close that off. All right, so it's looking like it should work. We can save it and let's try out. So as you can see, it shows account created successfully, and that is because we said Flash account created successfully. So that is great. Now what we can do is, before we move on to the homepage, let's make the homepage, and then we can try and log in with our credentials, which were name@gmail.com and then name, and we can see the homepage. So the final page is obviously the homepage. Let's take our login information and copy that over, because obviously a lot of it's going to be the same. So what we can do is we first have to change the name. It's going to be user homepage. Then inside the content, what we want to do is we want to display an H1. Same thing as usual, but this time we want to take the user's name that we stored in the database and display that inside the HTML. So what we're going to write is welcome, then double curly braces along with double curly braces to close them off, session user info, and then first name. So basically, we talked about session in the last video, but basically what session is it's a feature of Flask that basically says whenever a user logs in, we can set, we can use the browser to save certain information. And so right now we're using the browser to save the user's information, and we're using that session to then get that user information, which is the first name. So it's just going to be a nested array, and so the first thing we're going to do is a nested dictionary, and so we're getting user info and then getting user first name. So that should be enough to get the first name, and then the next part is not going to be no account. Instead, it's just going to be log out, and so we can delete this page and do log out. Then we'd have to specify the route to be log out. All right. So that is just going to be the very top of our homepage. The next part is going to be content, and so we don't need this anymore, and we also don't need this form, and so we are going to write a div that's going to be class is equal to text center border light, and p-5. Then we're just going to write a couple commands showing that we stored your information and we got it correct. So it's going to be an H2, and then the first thing we'll display is the first name, which is going to be similar to how we did user info first name. We can just copy that over here and paste, and so that's it. And then we just duplicate this. Let's do our last name, and then all we have to change is from first name to last name, and then finally we'd want to do their email. And so we just change this to email. And so basically that should be all the code. And so let's try it out. And so as we can see, account created successfully. Let's log in with name@gmail.com, and then password was name. Click login. It says welcome name, first name, last name, that's what we put, and then email name@gmail.com. So as you can see, we were able to successfully complete our backend and front end, successfully finishing our full stack application, and then the logout system obviously works. So hopefully this was a good project. Obviously it properly displays all of the qualities of Flask, such as using session, having MongoDB, and then also using things like Flash. And so the tools like Flask are really important because they allow you to use Python and connect it with HTML and CSS. So basically right now, just as a standpoint for the series, we really have gone over all of the things in Flask that you need to make your own projects. And so now, instead of continuing to make projects, what I want you guys to do is try and think about something you want to do and then go out and make it. Because with this series, you have all the tools to do it yourself. And so this is actually going to be the end of the series, except what I want you guys to do now is try and think about how you can use Flask to make your own project. So yeah, overall, we learned a lot of things about Flask, how to use it, about its features, how it interacts with HTML, and also how you can use another tool, Bootstrap, to quickly web develop and quickly add styles to your page. So yeah, this is going to be the conclusion of our Flask series, and I hope you like the projects we made, and we're going to be moving on to learning new technologies in the future. So yeah, thank you for watching, and bye.